Okay, welcome. Thanks so much for being on the Product Sessions podcast, Hans. Hans and I used to work together at Hurley, designing and developing t-shirts. It was a super fun time. There was like 7 or 8 guys and me all in this corner, this like back corner in the design area. And everyone was just joking and messing around all the time. You guys would play like handball a lot, I remember.
It was a bunch of rowdy boys that you had to deal with, but it was honestly, those are like the best times of my life.
Yes.
It was a fun job, and like just everyone was so cool.
Yeah, it was a great group of people and everyone was really laid back, but somehow we also got work done too.
Yeah.
And at the time, you and I were both launching businesses. So we would kind of have side chats occasionally about like what you were doing and how the progress was. And we kind of give each other ideas and advice. So Hans, I'm really excited to have you on because you're my first guest that is not a fashion-based product. You have like a different kind of product that we're going to talk about. So Hans, you're the creator and CEO at Tenikle, which in my opinion is kind of like a multifunctional suction mount tripod for your devices, kind of like your iPhone and your iPad. We use ours a lot at our house. And I think I've told you this, my favorite way that we use it is when we give our boys haircuts at home, we suction the iPad to the mirror so that they can watch YouTube while we're cutting their hair. My husband cuts their hair and so we love our Tenikle. Yeah. Hans, you were also on Shark Tank in 2021 and you had a successful deal with Daymond John, which is so exciting. And so I'm excited to hear about that as well. Thank you for being here.
Of course, thank you. I mean, of course I would be here, but well, it has been a wild ride, I think, for both of us, and it's been cool, like checking in every now and then, sort of. But when we were first starting together, it was like 2 baby sprouts in this world of entrepreneurship, trying to see what we were going to get into here. But Tenikle's been fun. It's definitely a different product. It's like the octopus mount is what I keep calling it. But well, cool.
I feel like that really sums it up. Octopus mount.
Yeah, that's what I have here. You know what? Our packaging at retail, octopus mount isn't clear enough. So we're changing it back to our bendable suction mount that is in the form of a tripod because it just makes more sense to people when they see it visually. Octopus mount is too like the hard part is this has been the hard part with Tenikle throughout the life of it is it does so many different things. So how do we like what category does it fit in? So it's always been a challenge to like figure out those things, and we can test whatever we can at retail. It works online better because you can explain the products longer, but on a shelf we're having some challenges just with that messaging, so we're changing it to different messaging. So anyways,
how do you summarize that in just a few short words? That's interesting.
Exactly.
Okay, so Hans, tell us a little bit more about your background, where you're from and your career and how you got where you are.
Well, you know most of my background. That's really the foundation of my whole career was Hurley. It was being able to learn from the business side of like, who are we targeting? What's the message we're trying to say as a brand? We had the Nike influence because Hurley was owned by Nike at the time. And so I feel like it was like a super cool education on a lot of levels there. It also, for me, it taught me like, because I started as an intern at a high school and I'd never done that stuff before. And it taught me things aren't really that hard. You just have to go try it and like figure it out. And I think that's really the foundation of it. I was just always wanting to try new things and do new stuff. And you were more on the develop side, so you got a super good education on how to like actually make stuff. which is super cool and valuable. And I think me being on the more creative side, because I was a t-shirt designer, right? So I mean, there's so much graphic stuff, not just with the t-shirts that are getting made, but even like putting CADs together and all that kind of thing for making the instructions on how to make something. Yeah, it was a really fun, awesome learning experience. And do you remember Wally Sato? So he was the creative director. And when there was a round of cuts, and of course I got under the chopping block for some reason. And Wally said one thing that like, kind of stuck with me for a long time. He's like, I'd be really bummed if you just make t-shirts your whole life. And that was like an interesting, at the time I was pissed off. I'm like, why are you getting rid of me? Because it was during that round of cuts. I ended up coming back to Hurley afterwards. So because I loved it so much. But that always stuck with me. And I was like, you know what, maybe you're right. So I started like working on some other ideas and things, and eventually came to Tenikle.
Yeah, I bet at the time you were like, making t-shirts is cool. Why would you say
Yeah.
that?
I'm like a 19-year-old or 20-year-old kid, like stoked on working at a surf company that I always thought was, I don't know, but you're right.
You're like, this is my dream job. What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So what inspired you to start Tenikle? Where did this idea come from?
Well, I guess I could say that Wally inspired it with just that little tidbit of like, do something else. And the idea actually came, it's funny, there's like when ideas come about, you usually get hit at multiple angles with things, right? For me, I wanted to make something. So I was working on a phone case. This was like back when phones were still kind of just becoming, smartphones were becoming like a lot bigger of a thing. I think it was like iPhone 4 that it was like, and I had an idea for a case with like slide attachments. You can slide different things onto. So you can slide a clip, you can slide wallets or phone mounts, like car mounts, or even lenses. And I had an idea for a lens that would switch to like a microscope switches lenses. It would be something
cool.
like that. A lot of those things ended up coming out anyways, but I made a marketing piece because, me being a graphic designer, I just led with visual first. And I made a marketing piece of a tentacle with 8 arms, and each arm was a different attachment. And I called it Tenikle. And I was like, that'd be really cool. Like, what if there was actually a product that was a tentacle? Like, what would that look like? And maybe it's a keychain. Maybe it's like, I don't know, something that actually uses bendable legs and suction cups, and you can mount things places. And that kind of clicked, and I was like, dang, that's actually a really good idea. And there was a point where I went on a hike, and I did the typical, prop your phone up. I was by myself. I was doing like a solo run hike thing, and I went to take a picture at the end of the hike. It was in Laguna Hills somewhere, but I went, did that, phone falls and breaks the screen, and of course, broken or, shattered screen, still usable. I go back to my car and I put it in my phone mount or my car mount, and I'm like, why couldn't that have also been my tripod? And then it was like, wait, I have this idea for this bendable such, like that could be it. And the rest is history. I decided it would be easier to make one product that did everything than all these other products that attached to this one phone case. And so that's the route I took. And here we are 10 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love hearing how your brain worked through that, because I feel like a lot of us have entrepreneurial drive and we're like, I want to start a business, but I don't know what to make. And so I thought it was cool just to hear how it took you a while to kind of figure out what it was exactly that you were going to make, but that you came to it eventually.
It's interesting you say that. I feel like a lot of times in entrepreneurship, people default to, let me solve a need for a problem. And that's the first thing that you're thinking of. You're thinking of all these problems and how to solve a need. Sometimes that can be a pretty effective way, but other times just play, like not really having a real solid general direction that you're trying to get to, or just having fun with ideas, and always keeping in your mind that you want to do something, you just don't know what it is yet, and just having fun and goofing around with different ideas. Like me drawing an octopus with 8 arms, there's no reason for me to do that. I was just like playing around with some different ideas, and then I even have the old drawings of the very, it looked totally different than how it looks now, but just play. Like sometimes you can come up with ideas that, I don't think the guy who invented the super soaker was solving a problem of running around squirting kids in the back. That's kind of why he invented it, but it's a hit, right? I don't know. It's just
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe a little less pressure on yourself to come up with something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Just enjoy your life, and then you'll stumble upon it.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, cool. I like that. I remember you going through the process of developing Tenikle, and you were telling me about like the molds, and there must have been a lot of trial and error to get it just right. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. It was tons of trial and error. And the first iteration of it, I didn't know how much things cost. So I just am told numbers. I'm like, oh, that's how much it costs. Okay. I spent $40,000 on the first set of molds.
Oh,
And my last set of molds I did was $4,000.
oh my gosh.
So you like and that was of course in US, but it was actually made in China, and they shipped the mold to the US. It is,
Ugh.
look at prices if you can, please, before
Do some comparison. Yeah.
Exactly. But so the process getting it there, actually, you know what? I have
Oh, cool.
the very first Tenikle.
Wow.
Look at this thing. So I had molded it out of clay, and in my bedroom, used like art silicone that's you can cast like your hand or cast different things. I used art silicone, and I made a mold out of clay of the shape of it, and then I used that silicone over the top to like make the mold, and then I peeled that one off and poured I had to make a mold of the mold first, and then pour the reverse. And this is like literally crappy wire and suction cups like tied around and then placed in there. I did it in my bedroom at my dad's house. And the morning, it takes about 24 hours to cure that art silicone. I woke up with the gnarliest sore throat from the fumes because it was in my bedroom.
No.
It was so bad.
Oh no. You're like sleeping with the chemicals.
So bad. But so the process was just me again goofing around and like wanting to be creative, and I always took it as like an art project, like something fun and interesting. And I got to a certain point where it was like, okay, this works. It's actually pretty cool. If I'm gonna keep doing this, I got to perfect the prototype. I got to come up with a really good design, and actually go for it and do it. So the first thing I did is I took a course. It was like a week-long course on Rhino 3D, which is a 3D modeling. There's so many other cheaper, better ones out. Well, that was pretty good, but it's too good. Like you don't need all those bells and whistles. Oh. So now I use a different one called MOI, MOI 3D. It's called Moment of Inspiration, is what it stands for. But I learned how to 3D design, and then I learned how to make this shape, which was incredibly difficult because it's super organic. So it's not like, just stretch a block and do that, but it needed to flow, the form. The legs needed perfectly align with the other legs, and I really wanted it to not be like too techy. I wanted it to feel kind of like more like a toy and something like playful and round and gummy. And so I learned how to design that, and then once I had a really nice design in 3D, I was walking in Irvine Spectrum. I was walking by, there was a booth that they'll scan your face and they'll 3D print your face. and like 3D print random objects. It was a little company called Stingify, and they had just a little kiosk at the mall, and I thought it was pretty cool. Like that, it was right when 3D printers were starting to become a bigger thing, and so I asked them, "Hey, if I brought you guys a file, will you print it for me?" They're like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I sent them the file, and they're like, "This thing's huge. We can't print this." Like, because it was, they're used to printing these little things, and I needed this big. And I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me the biggest size that you can do, and I'll try to cut it up into sections." So I ended up making like a 36-piece mold, because the suction cups, all the undercuts, everything needed to fit together. So it was like this big puzzle piece that I put together. I do the wire first. I bend the wire, put it in there, pour the silicone, and then the product would come out. And the lesson I learned in doing all this, that's way too much freaking work. You don't need to do that. Like, it was so over the top. Like, it did not need it. It was expensive. It was such a mess. I just thought, like, oh, I'll prototype it myself. I don't need to pay some company to go do this. Now you can just take a design to a factory, and they'll just give you a great working prototype. Weeks. Me,
Wow.
I probably went through like 100 different prototypes. I'm like sanding and polishing the suction cups because it needed to be perfect. And it was like so stupid, but it was fun. It was a good part of the process, and I'm super glad I like learned the hard way, but also, like, I guess, put in the sweat equity.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then when it came to the product done, I had used it's called thomasnet.com. I don't know if you heard of this one.
Mm-mm.
So it's thomasnet.com is a US factory source. So it's like Alibaba, but instead of Alibaba, showing all the products that they make, you type in the need. So for me, I needed metal wire bending for the interior part, because it was made out of metal. And I search a bunch, and then I found one that was sort of local. So I reached out to them. They said, "Yeah, we can do this." And then I needed the injection molding. At the time, I didn't know that silicone would be actually the best end product to use, because in my experience in prototyping, silicone would tear. As soon as there was a little thing, it would just tear and keep going. It was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But that's art silicone. That's not like real industrial grade silicone. It doesn't do that. So I found thermoplastics to be the thing that I should use. And so I found a company in Vista that did injection thermoplastics. Turns out thermoplastic was not the right thing to do, because it really affected the suction cups. Now we use silicone. It's a lot better. But that was the process. I'd say the best thing about Thomasnet is it gives you a list. And I made a spreadsheet, and I would, on my lunches, I don't know if you know this, I'd disappear. Everyone else would go to lunch. I'd disappear. I'd go on my lunches, and I'd call all the people on the list and see if they can make this thing. And back then, the design was actually functionally didn't even work. So a lot of places just turned me down. They're like, "We can't make this." Like, no way. So one company said that they can do it, but it needed some tweaks. I'm like, "Okay, I'm okay with some tweaks." And yeah, that's where the first Tenikles were made.
Wow, what a process.
I know, right?
You were committed. I love that.
If I were to say, find some guidance, if you can, of someone else who's made products before, and don't go down the crazy rabbit hole. I think for me, it was fun. I wasn't looking at it as like, I'm going to, I don't know. There was always like, I'm going to start this business, but it wasn't like business time yet. It was, for me, it was like art project time. This is fun. I'd love to see if people actually care about this. And so I didn't really take it. I took it seriously, but I didn't go seek help. The things I probably should have done.
Yeah, I feel like you had more of like a playful attitude about it. Like all your eggs weren't in that basket of this has to work right away. You're kind of like, well, I have my job. This is going to come when it comes. And you're just kind of chipping away at it until it came to fruition.
Yeah.
Which I think is the smart way to do it.
It's a smart way. There was an element where it's going to work. Like in my head, I'm like, I'm not putting all my eggs in this basket yet, but it's gonna work. And it was, I've had that attitude throughout the life of it, and there's been times where it was not working. It's like,
Yeah.
give up. This isn't working. Like, move on. And I didn't. And I just always had it like, I'm doing this. It's going to work. And I think if I didn't have at least a little bit of a lot of my head in the basket or eggs in the basket, as far as my attitude towards it, I don't think I would have made it this far. That's 100%. Not taking it that seriously in the early parts, but still working on it heavily was good to learn and to like kind of, learn the hard way, I guess, a lot of it. But having some bit of like, I am going to make this work, it allowed it to actually eventually get there.
Yeah. Your eggs weren't all in the basket right away. Like financially, you weren't like, I'm relying on this right away to be a success. But in the distance, you knew that someday this was going to be an actual product. But
Yeah.
you had that faith that it was going to end up.
I think that's a good way to, eventually, not all your eggs in one basket. Mentally, all your eggs in one basket. I think that's it. That's the, yeah.
And then I think one thing I notice about your product is that it's just so unique. It's not like you made a selfie stick and you just like tweaked it a little bit. It's just like a totally new thing, which I think not a lot of people are making a 100% new product. So you really had to go through the ringer on how to have that made.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of science behind suction cups. There's a lot of material science that I had to learn. The metal itself, the metallurgy, is a whole other science, because the product bends with metal and it repeatedly bends. And I don't know if you've noticed, anything that you bend with metal breaks. I figured out how to not break it. It literally cannot break. That the old ones broke, but figure out what's wrong, fix it, all that stuff. The new ones do not break. It's pretty wild, actually.
So much trial and error.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So do you have your products developed here in the US, or how did you find your manufacturer that you use today?
So the manufacturer I use today is actually through partnership from Shark Tank.
Oh, cool.
Which is different. They are cheaper, and I have better financing options with them for inventory. Prior to that, I had another fantastic factory, great people, called Kenbox. They have a satellite office in Westminster, and they were great. I found them because they actually reached out to me. At the time, I was still producing in Vista, which is one that I found by seeking from ThomasNet. And then when I did the Kickstarter and everything, eventually Kenbox had reached out and said, hey, we can do this better with silicone.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how that happened. Just having your products out there in the world sometimes, like, maybe because this is so weird and unique and different, it got different types of attention. But just having it out there, sometimes things come to you, and in that case, it did.
Awesome. So the listeners here are mostly entrepreneurs who want to start or have already launched their product-based business. And I feel like one of the biggest barriers we have as entrepreneurs is, how do we get the capital or the finances that you need to launch? And I know through conversations with you that you've gone through a couple different ways to raise that capital. Would you mind talking about the different ways that you've been able to finance your business?
Yeah. So the very first financing for developing the product was purely just me saving whatever cash I had. It was going into it, and it was fine. Once I got to the point where, okay, I know what I have to make now. Now I need molds to produce it and do all that. And then discovering that molds are going to cost me $40,000, which they didn't need to cost that much. I got screwed.
Ugh.
But learning that that's how much it was going to cost, it was like, well, shoot, how do I make this happen? And immediately defaulted to, I'm going to do a Kickstarter. Other people are going to pay for the mold. Once I started going down the Kickstarter rabbit hole and, planning and prepping and everything, I realized that there's a crucial thing for me being able to even do the Kickstarter. In order for me to make the Kickstarter videos and shoot all the product, I still needed the product.
Right.
How do you do it? And I did a very risky thing that I wouldn't advise people to do. I think in this case, because it was $40,000 for the molds, it was incredibly risky. But what I did is I went to the SBA and I got a business loan. It actually was pretty cool to have to go through the loan process because it jump-started all these other things to happen. I had to write a business plan. Like, I was like, oh, I guess I should have a business plan if I'm getting a loan. I had to actually file all the things correctly, do all the stuff to get the business like a real operating legit business with the LLC and all that stuff. So doing the business loan was actually a really good thing because it propelled all those things to happen. My dad thought it was nuts to get a product's going to work, and he's kind of right.
Mm-hmm.
In my head, it was I'm going to use it as a marketing thing because I'm going to launch before the holidays, and I'm going to promise everyone that they're going to get it before Christmas and before the holidays. And I know it sounds scary, but yeah. So I promised everyone, look, I already have the molds. I just need the money from you so I can produce it and go. And most Kickstarter things don't even ship for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually held to my promise and I got everything out. There was a few stragglers. It just happens in e-commerce, but I managed to do it within a pretty short window. I launched Kickstarter in August, ended in September, and shipped everything before the holiday, and it got to everyone. So I justified it in my head as, oh, this is going to help me move it faster to just get the loan now, pay for the molds up front, and then get it going. Like, that's how I'm going to do this. And it worked. So that was crazy. But so back on the original question, SBA loans, they can be risky because you're, promising to pay back something, but it's a great way to get capital without giving up any equity. You have to be okay with, things going south. And I think at the time I was, single guy, like, who cares? I can restart if I need to. So that was good. And then I went through a few other processes throughout the life of the business that I really used that as leverage for this business. And it got to a point where it was actually way too risky. I would way rather have investors helping, but the problem with that also in my head at the time was then I'm kind of in debt to these investors, and I would hate to disappoint people. Like, if someone had put their hard-earned money into my business, believing in me to do this, like, I would hate to burn. And so I always had that healthy fear of not taking money from investors either. So I was putting my money where my mouth was by getting these loans because I had to personally be liable for those. Mm-hmm. And it helped enough to just scrape by and get what needed to happen to continue on and build the business up. But that was great. And then eventually I did get an investor, Daymond John, on Shark Tank. And that's been a whole different, awesome, way easier experience than it was before. So, yeah.
You worked hard to get there. Yeah. Can you tell me, did you do Kickstarter and Indiegogo?
Mm-hmm.
Did you find the experiences very different, or were they pretty similar?
Yeah, they were actually quite different. Yeah, so Indiegogo, the cool thing about Indiegogo is it keeps going. So you can just keep it on there and continue selling on there. At least it did at the time when I did it. I'm not sure how they do it now. Where Kickstarter is a make or break. It's you have to raise a certain amount, and you have to be communicative with all your backers. That was something we were pretty good at. And I think for Kickstarter, it's more of a community where people are just excited to see cool things happen. And Indiegogo is a bit more like, in my perception, just really cool tech gadgets. It's a great way to sell for startups. When we're talking about funding the business, they're both incredibly useful because you're basically getting a sale. You've had to pay for any of the cost of goods. I mean, you could put some of your marketing as cost of goods there, but you're getting money from them to do that. I would say I would not be as successful on there had I not hired a third-party agency to help run the marketing. That was a crucial thing to really help it be big. I looked at Kickstarter as not being, because I had already gotten the mold to do that. For me, I had a different approach on how I looked at the Kickstarter. Now it's not how much margin can I push out of it to make these things, even though that was kind of an important part. For me was, I need to validate my business and get as high of a number as I can out of basically market validation, right? And then having a large user base that I can pull from and learn what needs to change on the product. So my approach was a little different going into Kickstarter. It was less like, help me make this thing become real. It was, this thing is real, out in the world and validate my business. And that was the approach I took. And I think it allowed me to make moves that were maybe a little riskier. Gosh, it sounds like my whole business is a bunch of risk, but it kind of was.
I mean,
but it allowed me
business
to,
is that way.
Yeah, exactly. And so I used a company called Funded Today. They're still around. They're great. And they specialize in Kickstarter marketing. So they have email lists of people that they've raised like hundreds of millions of dollars at this point, just all the people that have used them. There was a lot of bad reviews I saw on their stuff. I'm like, what's this all about? And the bad reviews were people complaining that they took my $2,000 and then said that they couldn't work with me. But those people didn't understand how it actually works. So what they do is they take a test budget, you pay them $2,000 basically, and they use that $2,000 to run a test to test if the product's going to work or not, if it's going to resonate. And so if they can reach a certain level of return on ad spend, then they'll work with you. So that was it was a 2-week trial period, $2,000, 2-week trial period. And I was like nervous, like, is this thing going to work? And like, who knows? And so I took it in all I can control is what they can use. So I was just making all kinds of stuff and just sending it to them, like, try this one, try this one, try this one, like all these different ads. And they found some that really worked. And they're like, okay, great, we'll work with you. And they took 30, at the time it was 30% of all the sales. But what was crazy is they fund the marketing too. So it was on their marketing dollar, and they would take a percentage of the overall sales, which was a really interesting way to have low risk for me, the creator, and they assume the risk. And if the ads are working and it's moving and flowing, then great. We did really well on Kickstarter. My goal was 15,000, and I think we did about 112,000 on Kickstarter.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we did another like 640 or 50 grand on Indiegogo, and then some pre-sales on the website. And for me,
so you paid back the loan. So you paid back the loan then.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? I didn't pay the loan with all that money because now I had some capital I can start a business with. I know how much my loan payment is. Just keep the loan payment and take as much cash as you can and start a business and do that. So that's how it went.
That's amazing. I have never heard of that, hiring an agency to help you with Kickstarter. That's so cool. I did a
Yeah.
Kickstarter, but I don't know if those agencies existed at the time. I did it quite a while ago. Maybe they did. But one thing I did do is that I sent a message to literally every Facebook friend that I had that said,
Yeah.
like, hi, will you support my campaign? And that helped.
Awesome. It's tough to promote your Kickstarter. The good thing about these agencies is that they're already marketing to people that have bought from Kickstarter before.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you know or if you've ever bought anything off of Kickstarter. It's not easy. It's not like shopping around in a store and like it's a pledge. What's a pledge? What do I get? Like which pledge do I pick? Why is that one not have any pledges left? When do I get the products? Like for most people, it's kind of confusing for the average
Yeah.
Joe. So marketing to people who've already bought on Kickstarter, it's a lot better. And then they did a lot of tricks like cross promotion of other live ones and a lot of interesting tweaks and things that they did that really helped. So it was cool.
Cool. So with this agency, do they usually create their own ads, or did you have to supply all of the content for the ads?
I supplied the raw content. So videos, I would give them some, well, videos and photos, but I would give them some that were totally unedited, and then they would actually like do some editing to them.
Okay. So before you go, we have to talk about Shark Tank.
Mhm.
Uh, how did you end up there? Was that always the plan? And once you did it, were there a lot of like hoops to jump through to finally get on air?
Uh, yeah. Well, so it was sort of all because if you remember Ray Coder,
Uh-huh.
always joking with me that he was like one of the sharks, and I would like have to pitch to him, and it was always just a crack up like talking with him about it. But it was always like in the back of my head, like, oh, I'd love to be on Shark Tank to help promote my business and do that, and I'd love to get a deal. Uh, I always knew it was kind of like a shot in the dark to do that. Like it's pretty difficult to get on. Um, but yeah, it was always like in the cards at some point to do, to the point where I wouldn't even watch because it got me too nervous. It gave me so much anxiety watching other people on there, like like I don't know, it just hits so
Yeah.
close to home. So honestly, I really, for being on the show, I really have not watched that much Shark Tank purely out of anxiety. Getting on was insanely difficult. The producers actually reached out to me the first time around. So they reached out in 2018, and it was like, it was a Monday. Friday was the last day to get anything in. I'm like, wait, number one, I'm not ready. Number two, I'm not ready. Like, there's no way. But I thought, what the heck? We'll throw a Hail Mary and we'll see if we can get on here. And you have to send in a video of who you are, your idea, what you're seeking, where you're from, and all that stuff. And send in a video. Actually, it was with Lydia, and I can just tell she's like, "There's no way in hell I'm going on Shark Tank." My wife, she's like, "There's no way you're dragging me up there to do this with you." But we shot the little video, and it was horrible. And of course, we didn't get on. It was like a goofy, horrible video. So, and then in 2021, now we're living in Dana Point, and things are going a lot better. The product is a lot better. Actually, things were kind of not going a whole lot better. Actually, there were some problems, um,
But the product was
but
better.
the product was a lot better. And I saw they were casting again, and I thought, you know what, this time I'm gonna do this. I think it's time. I think I got a good story. I can do this. So I did the video, and this time around, I decided, like, what are they looking for? It's TV. They don't care about your product actually that much. The product has something to do with it, but the production team is trying to make good TV. And so I thought, okay, let's just be ridiculous. Like, let's be a personality. And one of the rules was don't hold your phone. So I start the video by holding my phone and I go, I know you don't like that I'm holding my phone right now, but watch this. And then I put it on a wall, and then there's a tripod behind me. And so I said, you said to use a tripod, but I'm going to show you you don't need tripods anymore. And I kick the tripod and I do this like ridiculous thing. I'm the inventor of it. And it was like so obnoxious. Like no one's like that in real life. But that was what got me the attention. Just be like this. And then I got a call back and they're like, hey, we're interested. We want to talk more. I'm like, okay, I'm going to, put this pitch together. My goal was, I don't want to take myself too seriously. I've never done that in my business, and I don't certainly want to be the cool guy now. I'm definitely not the cool guy. And I
yes, you are, Hans.
No, I definitely a goofball, and I wanted to, be myself and have fun and just see what happens. Like, basically the goal was just make good TV. And if I make a really compelling and great episode, I will see higher sales. If it's a boring, stupid, like goofball, then you're not going to get as much sales. So my goal from this was Shark Tank is kind of the thing that keeps giving, right? You air once, like that's the biggest spike in sales, and then you air more times after that, and you consistently still get like good little chunks of sales. So I thought, this is my infomercial. I got to just make it really good. And I actually got some guidance, some little notes. My dad's neighbor is friends with Pete Hamburg, who was the inventor of the handboards, the giant longboard skateboards. Do you ever see those?
Mm-hmm.
They're like 6 feet tall skateboards. So he gave me some pointers, and it's just like surfing. Walking into the tank is like dropping into a wave, and then you do your bottom turn when you start the pitch. It was great. I love this, but it was super helpful. And so the crazy part is I got all the way to the end. Like, okay, you're on the show. Congratulations. We're really excited to have you. And during the whole process, we started in Dana Point and we ended up in an RV in Menifee. Like that's during that whole process, the business kind of like massive shakeup. I wasn't getting inventory in time right before the holidays. I ran out of marketing dollars entirely. It was looking pretty bleak and things were getting pretty rough. And my wife was like, look, you have this opportunity. Let's take it. Let's all in everything. We're getting rid of all of our rent. We're getting rid of all of our stuff. Whatever we can sell at garage sales, we'll do. And then everything else we just get rid of. I remember like backing a U-Haul in at the dump and just getting rid of like crap that was in my life. And it was like such a cleanse. And it was like a hard thing to go through. It was like, this isn't my choice. Like, but it was kind of like a cool thing too. It was like, I have this opportunity. We can take it. We can do this.
Wow. You have a supportive wife.
Isn't she great? She's the best. Yeah. It's actually our anniversary today.
Oh, wow. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia, for sparing Hans for your anniversary.
Yeah. So we moved into the RV, and yeah, things were pretty rough, but I had a gung-ho attitude that we're going to make this happen and it's going to work. And
so once you finally made it, how was it to like walk out on that floor? Was that just totally nerve-wracking?
It doesn't feel real still. It's like I have like a couple flashes of images of actually being there, but I kind of blacked out. To be honest. I knew it went well. I was in there for an hour and 20 minutes, and they only aired 10 minutes of it. So yeah, it was quite an experience. I was so exhausted afterwards. They actually have a therapist that comes to your trailer and talks to you after your pitch, because some people's entire dreams just go up in flames on national television in front of millions of people. Like it's a gnarly thing. So I don't know if they do it, if it was like they had to do it or what, but it was a smart thing to have a shrink. And the shrink even said to me, he was a super nice guy. He's like, I know you're feeling on top of the world right now, but I just know that it's all going to come crashing down in a few hours. You're going to feel really depressed, and that's super normal. And I was like, what? Okay, I'm like stoked right now. I
You're
don't know
like,
what you're
I'm
talking
good.
about. Sure enough, I got hit by a train wreck. It was like all this emotion and energy and like excitement, all the adrenaline, everything just depleted everything. And I was like, why do I feel so weird right now? And then I started like second guessing, like, how did it really go? I felt like it went great, but I don't really know. And then, it's about 6 months for them to edit all the stuff and everything and then eventually get on the show. And even at that point, you don't know if you're even going to be on even if you get a deal, it doesn't mean you're on the show. Like
Uh-huh.
they don't air every episode. So it was a long process. And then we had a Shark Tank party at my house, and I still had never seen the episode. It was like, just, we're all going to watch it for the first time together. And it
How
was so nerve
nerve-wracking.
wracking. Yeah. And the week before the commercials, Daymond yelled at some other guy, but they edited and made it look like he was yelling at me. And I'm like, did that happen? Like, I blacked out. I don't really remember everything that happened in there. And I was like stressing, tripping out. Like they can make you look like an idiot too. Like they're just making good TV. So I couldn't, but it
Yeah.
was the best. Honestly, it could not have gone any better. The episode turned out great. They didn't make me look like an idiot.
And you even made a
And
funny joke about how you were out. And for those reasons, I'm out.
And for those reasons, I'm out. I wasn't planning on saying that, but I just
Really.
remember Ray always saying that to me. And for those reasons, I'm out. Say that to me. I just threw it in there.
I
Like
love it.
I wasn't really planning on saying it, but it totally hit. Like, it was the perfect
You did
time.
great.
Yeah.
So, was
But
Daymond the shark that you were hoping for?
I did actually. My
Cool.
mom, beforehand going into it, my mom asked, "Oh, which one would you pick?" I really like Mark Cuban. Everyone loves Mark Cuban. And I said, "No, I want Daymond." It's like, "Daymond?" I'm like, "Yeah, he comes from Fubu. It's like that's kind of my background, Hurley. He's like the most down to earth guy.
Hmm.
He seems to be the one that's like actually his nickname is the people shark, and he really is. He's like super down to earth, and he was texting me last night. I got a bunch of texts from
What?
Damon last night. It's pretty cool. Yeah, he's a cool guy actually. And
That's
yes, I wanted
amazing.
to work with David, and I got to work with David. So pretty crazy.
So, has he been helping you a lot through the process? You changed manufacturers. What else has
Yeah.
he?
So we brought in a new partner, Cody. He introduced me to Cody, who's his friend, and Cody has a big lighting company called Lightsall, and they sell to everywhere. It's like Costco, Home Depot, Walmart. He's everywhere. And so I went out, flew out to Chicago to go meet him and see what they're all about. And it was a really cool experience. He's a really good guy, and he lives in this part of Illinois. It's where he grew up, called what is it? Peru. Almost blank. It's called Peru, Illinois, and it's a really cool little town. And he seems to be like single-handedly making the town better. So he bought this. He used to have a little office. He showed me his little office he used to have. It was like about as big as this one. And he's like, "Yeah, I used to sleep under my desk sometimes here." And he rented that little office in this huge warehouse. It's called the Clock Tower, where they used to make clocks. And years later, here he is. He bought the place, so now he
Wow.
owns the whole building, and he's turning it into like a really cool, like he has this place called Fire on Fifth. It's like a pizza place. Um, there's taekwondo, art studios, dance class, music lessons for kids on a whole other wing. He's got a brewery in there now with some other company came in and is doing the brewery. So he's like turned this town that really doesn't have a lot of. It didn't seem like they had a lot of interesting stuff happening in this immediate area, and he's like really turning it around, and it's become the pop and spot. But he's an entrepreneur. He's done a bunch of different things. So he has a lighting company, And yeah, he's been great just with helping. They've been financing Tenikle with, um, ordering inventory and all that stuff. And now
Wow.
they ship the product, and he's been great. David has been sending me tons of contacts, tons of great contacts on things, lots of content too. So you'll start seeing more content from Daymond. But it was a long process going through the due diligence because just because you make a deal on the show doesn't mean you really have a deal.
Hmm.
So I was really fortunate that, I think I set all the red flags on the show. So they weren't expecting anything different. In fact, the business was doing better than what they had anticipated. I, I really shared all my skeletons of everything that was happening. Uh, and in reality, I kind of took that as an opportunity to make good TV. And in reality, there was a lot of things that were doing a lot better for the show,
Hmm.
for the business at the time. So he's been incredible. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is he helping you to get into more retail stores?
Yeah. So we started putting together some strategies on some retail stuff, and we approached a couple already. We don't have a solid yes yet, but I've actually been doing a lot of work on my own end with retail, and I met a great group of guys that have kind of become my own personal team on retail stuff. So we have the trifecta partnership, right? Daymond is the influence. He's the, you know, gets us all these great contacts. I'd love to share all the ones that we're working with, but yeah, a lot of great stuff from Daymond there. And then Cody is all the manufacturing, and he has a sales team too. And putting together the product for retail is totally different than like e-commerce because there's just a lot of technical things like UPC codes and PDQ packaging and how many fits on a pallet and how much is the pallet is just like a lot of stuff like
Yeah.
that. So and then his whole operations team, so fulfillment and all that stuff. And new product creation. We have a lot of really fun, cool stuff coming out
Oh,
very soon, which
cool.
very excited to share.
Wow.
Um, so him on that, and then me on everyday technical, like who can I call to inspire? What is the thing I should be working on? How do I organize the business? So a lot of high level stuff, and then a lot of in the weeds, like things like retail sales and new product design and stuff like that. So it's a great little trifecta partnership, and it's been going pretty good. We just had our biggest year ever last year, and it
Congratulations.
was pretty sweet. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
That's
so
exciting.
it's going.
Awesome, Hans.
Yeah.
Okay. So, before we go, is there any like additional resources or actionable takeaways that you would share with someone that's wanting to launch their own product-based business?
Yeah. Um, Talk to people who've done it before, number one. If there's anyone that you know, or actually, a lot of people are more accessible than you'd think. Like just reaching out to someone who's a starter of a brand or has made, you know, like mommy bags, for instance. Like,
Yeah,
put them in. Like,
exactly.
people are a lot more accessible than you realize. So just shooting your shot and getting it out there and trying to see if you can, manage to get through to someone that can help you on certain things. More often than not, people are willing to help. And the other thing I would say, so Daymond actually has a course online that I took called Daymond on Demand. It's
Okay.
he gave it to me, obviously. I didn't have to pay for it. My partner. But he goes really in depth on a lot of good stuff from marketing to social media to even some operations type stuff on how to run your business and everything. So really good thing to go through Daymond on Demand.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and then lastly, where can the listeners find and connect with you? What are your handles?
Uh, my personal is the easiest to get to. It's at Hans Dose on Instagram. Um, Our Tenikle Instagram is Tenikle. That's how you spell Tenikle. And or just email me, hans@tenikle.com. And yeah,
Awesome. Thanks, Hans. I can't wait to see the new products that are coming out. I'm so excited to see that.
thank you. Me too.
Okay, thanks so much for being here. You're the best.
Rebecca, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, bye.